again, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. It is a delight to learn more about this peace pact and all of the history and everything that I did not know. So this is a new, we're always in search of new learnings and new understandings of how to bring peace into the world. So really a great thing to know about. So thank you. Thanks for the work you do and for inviting me to be here today. So yes, indeed, for Christians, it is just about here, a day and a half away till we get to Christmas. And I just want to say that for a long time, I have had in my mind that I would like to do an interfaith Christmas service. Now, you might think that that's crazy. Who other than Christians would want to come to such a thing? But I have in my mind that there's something more to the Christmas story than just the way that Christians have always looked at it, that we can expand it and make it into an interfaith understanding of it. So just to back up a second, I mean, I grew up in a Christian family and grew up with the nativity set, the creche, with the figures of Mary and Joseph and the shepherds and the whole thing. Never thought about it. It was just something that was there. But then in my later time, really started to question what I really believed about Christianity, the things that I had been taught. Didn't, as a child, you don't question these things too well. That's not true. You do question, but maybe you don't ask it out loud. But what is the truth? Yusuf, you were talking about the principle of truth and seeking the truth. What's the truth of this story? And to me, it wasn't making any sense. And I thought, this story just, I don't get it. How can a star move across the sky like that to lead the Magi to the baby Jesus? Like, what? That doesn't make sense to me. So I really started to question this and to actually reject the whole thing. I refused to even have a nativity set or creche in my home. They wanted nothing to do with it. But then I began to understand it in a different way. And it was a process for sure, because I was learning a lot. And this was a time when progressive Christianity was beginning to really flower, and we started realizing that there were other ways. There are other ways of looking at our scripture and other ways of looking at these stories than as literal stories. And so for instance, there's a writer, the late Marcus Borg, biblical scholar, who in one of his books says that, to paraphrase words used by a Native American storyteller as he tells his tribe's story of creation, said, "I don't know if it happened this way, but I know this story is true." And so learning this difference between what is true about the story, not necessarily the so-called historical facts, but there's truth. And so this really intrigued me. But how can this be brought into the interfaith arena? And so, as part of my own process, beginning to understand the meaning of myth, the power of myth, as Joseph Campbell would say, that this really resonated and brought me to an understanding of what myths would make the Christmas story not only more meaningful to Christians like me, but to everyone. I happened to see a billboard that the American Atheists put up about Christmas, and it says, "It's a myth. This season, celebrate reason." And I chuckled because, and this is not a slam on atheists at all, but I just kind of chuckled because many people do not understand what a myth is. A myth doesn't mean that something's not true, but a lot of people don't understand that religious myths point to transcendent truths through stories, symbolic stories. So now I'm not putting myself out there as any kind of expert on myths, right? I mean, there's a whole lot that's written about religious myths from Joseph Campbell and I mean Carl Jung and all kinds of people. But what I understand about myths is that getting into them, it's not a rational or an intellectual activity, right? You don't go into it with this literal kind of rational mindset. So my sense was telling me that the myth of the Christmas story was actually more true than taking it literally. So once I got to that point, then it really opened up for me that I could that it could be there for people of any faith or of no faith. I have a member in my congregation whose son and daughter-in-law are atheists and quite, you know, firm about it. Don't want to believe in any kind of religious belief. However, the daughter-in-law loves listening to Christmas music, Christmas carols, religious Christmas music. And her son looks at her like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And he says, I don't know, but there's something about it. It's just beautiful. And I thought, yeah, you know what? There's something there, and maybe you don't even know what it is, but there's something in there to this story. So and I've never been able to convince anybody to do an interfaith Christmas service, although United Religions Initiative, which was founded at the 50th anniversary of the United Nations in order to bring together people of all religions. They did an interfaith Christmas program a few years back, and it was really good. It was good, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. You know, I was really looking for, well, I'll explain more. I finally decided a few years ago that I was going to get a nativity set, a creche. This was my big thing. I'm going to get this. So I actually ordered it from a pottery that I liked back in Pennsylvania because I collect salt glaze Pennsylvania pottery, German actually. But anyway, I was so excited when it came and I started opening it up. And of course, then I brought it. So hopefully you're going to be able to see all these things. So, you know, we got Mary and where's Mary? We had Mary and Joseph. Okay, that was good. Baby Jesus. We got baby Jesus here and baby Jesus. And we had all of the characters along with some sheep and some cows. But then it got kind of weird. I took out the Magi. Oh, I didn't bring the Magi with me. I took out the Magi, and you probably know that we sing about the three kings, right? And we three kings of Orient are, and they bring the three gifts. But in the Bible, it doesn't say. In the New Testament, it doesn't say how many. So in my set, it arrived with four Magi. And I'm looking at it going, well, that's weird. And then the next thing that happened, I opened up two giant ducks. See, now here's the sheep. Here's this giant duck. And I thought, well, how weird is that? What role did these giant ducks have in the Christmas story? So all of a sudden my brain was like, oh wow, now it's really opening up into whole new realms. And so I really started thinking about what this all meant. The one thing was there were no shepherds and there were no angels in the set. I did find an angel at a thrift store though, which was really cool. So I got my angel. So let me just kind of talk about some of these characters in this story and what they might mean to us. So for instance, angels in dreams. How mystical can you get, right? Angels in dreams, and angels play a major part in the Christmas story. An angel explains Mary's pregnancy to Joseph in a dream. An angel warns Joseph to flee to King Herod, and then another one comes and tells him when it's safe to go home. An angel tells Mary what's going to be happening. And when Jesus is born, an angel comes to tell some shepherds Don't be afraid. I'm bringing you good news of great joy. And then this whole horde of angels show up. So angels are very important. The biblical scholar John Dominic Crossan says that angels direct, as it were, the narrative traffic of the infancy stories. And he urges us to think of angels as ultimate meanings, radiantly personified. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I do know that it's something that's spectacular, mystical, jaw-dropping, totally awe-inspiring. This is where the barrier between heaven and earth just dissolves. And angels are able to come here, and we are able to be part of the heavenly realm, and thin places all over the place where we can encounter the divine. And dreams also are windows into our unconscious. So these are not intellectual assertions, but these can be mystical encounters with the divine that are available to anyone. And then Mary we have here. Now, you can say a whole lot about Mary. We can talk about Mary all day. And, you know, a lot of people have interpreted and mythologized and created stories about her, all kinds of things. But the one that is most meaningful to me is what is called the Magnificat, when she learns that she's going to bear a child. And the angel Gabriel explains all this to her. And she finally says, and this is what she says: "My soul proclaims your greatness, O God, and my spirit rejoices in you, my Savior. For you have looked with favor upon your lowly servant, and from this day forward all generations will call me blessed. For you, the Almighty, have done great things for me, and holy is your name. Your mercy reaches from age to age for those who fear you. You have shown strength with your arm. You have scattered the proud in their conceit. You have deposed the mighty from their thrones and raised the lowly to high places. You've filled the hungry with good things, while you've sent the rich away empty. You've come to the aid of Israel, your servant, mindful of your mercy, the promise you made to our ancestors, to Sarah and Abraham and their descendants forever." The Magnificat, I mean, we sing it in church, and we read this, and we kind of like, okay, yeah, okay, it's so familiar. But the American missionary, E. Stanley Jones, who was a close friend of Mahatma Gandhi, called the Magnificat the most revolutionary document in the world. And in the mid-1900s, another missionary in South America was arrested after reading the Magnificat in a radio broadcast. It said that the Magnificat so terrified the Russian czars that they tried to outlaw its reading. It was used in Argentina to call for nonviolent resistance. And in the 1980s, the government of Guatemala banned it because it was considered subversive, politically dangerous. The authorities worried that it might incite oppressed people to riot. Whoa, all of that because of Mary, meek and mild. Maybe not so meek and mild. Mary actually embodies a vision of divine justice, of God's vision of reversing the fortunes of the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots. The oppressed will be taken care of. And so this to me is something that is beautiful for anyone to think about, this vision of a beautiful social order where all of the people in need are taken care of, and there is an end to war, and there is peace. So that to me is a beautiful way of thinking about Mary. Shepherds, I don't have any shepherds, they didn't come with it, but shepherds were the lowest end of the social order. They lived a hard scrabble life, and they were often accused of being shiftless and untrustworthy. I mean, they were not the kind of people that you would invite to visit your newborn baby. These were like the lowest of the low. But guess what? The angels made their big announcement to these raggedy, taggedy sheep herders first, signaling to us that this story has something to do with the most marginalized people in the world. The presence of the angels with the shepherds sanctifies the margins, people on the margins, making these places holy places, making the economically and socially marginalized holy people. So there have to be shepherds in our interfaith nativity scene, because they're not just bit players. They're not grunt workers. They symbolize the fact that the spectacular, mystical, jaw-dropping, totally awe-inspiring presence of the holy can be anywhere. I mean, maybe not a choir of angels singing over my house or your house, but if there can be a divine presence, not only in the so-called highest heaven, but also at the margins, wherever we might find those margins, then there can be a divine presence anywhere and everywhere in between. So those shepherds are really, really, really important. Now, Joseph, it's often lamented that we don't hear much about Joseph. Poor Joseph. You know, he sort of appears and disappears. But you know what? He really embodies some really important things. He was loyal. He was loyal to Mary. But he was open to hearing God speak through angels and through dreams. He was open to the presence of the divine, and he listened and he followed their instructions. That's not a bad example for anyone. I think even in his limited role, kind of, he has something to offer to us about opening ourselves up to the presence of the divine through dreams, through meditation, through all kinds of things that are not necessarily international, the intellectual or the rational. Now, the Magi, who I forgot to bring over here with me, the Magi, the wise men, they don't come till later. But you know, in the Christian story, we conflate the story of Matthew, Gospel of Matthew, and the story in the Gospel of Luke, and we mush them together. But there are a lot of differences in there. The Magi are only in Matthew. But this is an interfaith encounter going on here. These Magi were probably Zoroastrians. We don't know for sure, but probably from the East. And the biblical account doesn't give the number, so it could be any number of them. But here were members of one religion coming to pay homage to a person of another religion. And there was no attempt at proselytizing or converting or debating doctrinal beliefs or anything like that. It was just these two religions coming together in respect and honor. And then the Magi returned and they went home. They returned to their own religion. When I did my doctoral thesis was on the intra-faith conversation and talking about how when we pass over into another religion and we learn about it faithfully, then we come back to our own religion with some new understandings. And I envision that this was what happened with the Magi, that they went back home with some new understandings of what it meant to be in the presence of the divine. I don't have a star in my creche, but I do have stars all over my house because I love stars, because what a symbol of enlightenment, of the leading of the divine to truth. I think that's such an important, and we don't have to worry about, well, what was it? Was it a comet? Was it a what? No, it doesn't matter what it was. It was a way of understanding that we all can be led by the light of the divine into truth. And I think that's something that we can all relate to. Now, the other thing is, I had the two ducks, I had the sheep and the cows and the big ducks, who I discovered later on were part of the Noah's Ark collection because I started seeing other animals on eBay. So I actually got a giraffe and an elephant and a zebra and a lion. I have more, I didn't bring them all, but all these animals that I include with my nativity set because I really believe that this revelation, this moment of God coming to us in this story includes all of creation, includes the animals and all of creation. And by imagining that here's the lion, imagining that they were all there helps us to think about our world, the world around us, the animal world, and everything that we are called to care for because they are holy. These are part of the divine story. So, well, of course, then there's Jesus. We could talk forever about Jesus. But in mythology, we have the birth of the hero, the hero's journey. We had the divine child. Lots of beliefs about Jesus. As people of different faiths, we can talk about how we understand Jesus, strictly in the historical sense. And the teachings of Jesus were very much like the teachings of other great religious leaders, right? And we could also talk about the more cosmic aspects of the cosmic Christ, Christ consciousness, the ground of our being, ways of understanding this story beyond this human Jesus. That's a lot more to be said about that. But then there are other figures at the manger, right? You may have seen, I don't know if you've ever seen this, the crashed baby Jesus with Santa Claus kneeling there. So that's not my favorite thing, but some people get great meaning out of that somehow Santa Claus, everybody bows down to Jesus. And then I love this one, the little drummer boy. I may have seen this meme. Mary, exhausted having just gotten Jesus to sleep, is approached by a young man who thinks to himself, what this girl needs is a drum solo. I love that. So anyway, religious myths can turn ordinary life into an abiding, transcendent experience, a small but crucial segment of an epic cosmic drama. The boundaries between this world and a bigger world dissolve. There's no more here and there. Instead, transcendence abides in the here and now. I think that's a great way of putting it and helping us to understand how this story can be so much bigger. Now, I'll just close by saying, I don't have this all figured out. If I were going to put together an interfaith Christmas service, I would need help. So I am absolutely open to suggestions, critique, and all of that. I think you may think it's just a dumb idea completely, and it's okay too. But if you have suggestions, or maybe someday I'll actually get to do my service. But in the meantime, got my creche and getting ready for the Christian celebration of Christmas. Thank you so much for listening to this. I hope it made some sense at all. I don't know if there's time for Q&A, but I'll just leave it there.
There is plenty of time. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Susan. Thank you. This is very interesting. Thank you. Yeah, please feel free to ask any questions. The floor is yours now. Question time to Susan.
Everybody will have to unmute themselves. And then they can just jump in or whatever. We can raise hands. I don't know how Yusuf wants to do it.
I've either put you to sleep or wowed you so much that you're speechless.
Oh, far from it. No, I thought it was wonderful, Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, it was wonderful. You touched on so many things, and like you said, every sort of little sub chapter, as it were, opens up a huge canvas, doesn't it? There's so much you can say. I mean, I suppose I've drawn a lot from Carl Jung, certainly in my approach to it. And certainly the whole language of myth. I don't know if you've come across Ken Wilber, but he's helped me a lot in that whole understanding of myth, really, as a language to talk about things that can't, the deep structures of the psyche, if you like, that cannot be talked about in any other way. And I remember going on a sort of Jungian training thing. It was about the Christmas, well, the whole sort of rituals around Christmas. And I think it was a genius, an inspiration of Francis of Assisi to give us, the first nativity set. Because I think it's a realization, isn't it, that prayer, when it engages the imagination, takes us into realms that just verbal prayer can't. And it's something about the power of the imagination as a bridge between worlds as well, I think. But the thing about this particular Jungian sort of presentation that always stayed with me really was that the person presenting it talked about all of those things that you've talked about, not so much the zebras and things, but certainly the oxen and the asses. And also as the shadow figure in the background, you know, Herod and the nastiness and the slaughter of the innocents, all of it, and the flight of the family, you know, all there behind the scenes, as it were. But it all represents the human condition. You know, each one of us, of course, has within us the baby. You know, Christ is born so that he may be born into our own hearts.
Yes.
And all
Yes.
of that. And those other things, the animals and the angels, that they're aspects of, you know, we have the angelic within us, we have the diabolic within us. All of these things, you know, there's something about the gestalt of it all. And I think that's why it's sort of so, over the centuries, become so central to the, you know, Christian experience and rituals, ceremonies around Christmas.
You know, I have a friend who is a pastor, Swedenborgian pastor. She's retired now, and she moved up to Western Marin County, which, if you know California at all, it's one of the most secular areas in the country. Nothing to do with organized religion. However, she does a Christmas Eve service every year that people come out to. They want to hear the story. They want to sing the songs. There's something there that draws us.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you cannot get away from the fact. I mean, I don't know if you come across that recent book Dominion by the historian guy that's made such a sort of impact all over the place. But I mean, we cannot escape the fact that, you know, our society, Western culture anyway, has been massively shaped by Christianity, and that comes through in so many ways. And I think even if people don't practice, even if they say they can't, you know, subscribe to the story and so on and so forth, yet there's so much in it, you know, the themes of forgiveness, of charity, all of these things, you know, they go underground, but they come through, don't they? And so they are operating in people's hearts and minds, whether they go with the Christian tag or not.
Right. There's a lot of talk about, you know, Mary and Joseph, when they're warned to flee from King Herod because he wants to kill the child, Jesus, and they flee to Egypt. And there's a lot of talk now, well, there's been for years, but that they were refugees. These were refugees fleeing violence in their homeland, and what that means for us today. So there are lots of ways to connect the story to today, actually. And even, you know, Bethlehem, the Christian church in Bethlehem is closed. There's no Christmas service, Christian Christmas service in Bethlehem this year. And there's a picture going around of a child lying in the rubble in Gaza. And yeah, this is the manger today.
I don't know if it's not happening. The pastor was interviewed on Radio 4 this morning. It sounded to me as though services were going ahead, but
okay.
Well, certainly not a Merry Christmas. No, it's a penitential Christmas.
I got to check that out before I put it in my
yeah. Sure, check that. It was on Radio 4 if you can get that.
Okay. Thank you.
This morning.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
still,
know.
It connects to current events, right?
Oh, massively. I don't know where the interfaith goes with it, to be honest. I mean, I do a lot of interfaith work, retreats and everything. And I think if you can get to the level of shared contemplation, you're home. However, when you come down to the street level and you're talking about sort of everyday religion, there seem to be quite significant differences between, for example, the Muslim interpretation, understanding of Jesus and of Christmas, therefore, and that which derives from the great tradition, which says that, you know, God became man so that man may become God. Jesus is the man of the eighth day, the Orthodox Church. How do you possibly fit that into a Muslim frame?
I mean, even within Christianity, there are different ways of understanding. So yeah, how do you do that? I think that's where you have good conversation, right? And you don't make somebody wrong because they have a different idea than you do, but let's open it up to understanding what does that story mean to you? You know, not just on an intellectual level, but what does it mean to you? How does it inform your life? Is I think I don't know how to do it in the context of a worship service, but
No.
yeah, Barbara, hi.
Well, I was wondering about the connection with interfaith. Is number one, remember that Matthew and Luke, for example, and all of them, were written in a particular time and in a particular place, as were all the other religions, Buddha and China and India, and Mohammed also in the Middle East, but in a certain time and in a certain place, and to have the dialogue of how does God, however we understand God and the universe, stick its head into the human situation in which we are. And for Matthew and Luke, it was a message that was 2,000 years ago. And in what ways do the other stories of the other religions and the other myths of the other faiths refer to a deity and otherness that sticks its head into the human situation? That says there's another way, folks.
Yeah. Just as you were talking, I was thinking about that too, that you know, at this time of year when we have Christmas, it's not because Jesus was born on December 25th. We celebrate it then because it's around the time of the solstice. But Judaism has a ceremony of lights for Hanukkah. Christianity has lights. We have Diwali, which isn't always at Christmas time, but you know, and solstice for sure. We always have this thing about, you know, light coming into our world, that, you know, there are some commonalities that we maybe could find. Yeah, thanks. Anybody else? You can disagree with me too. That's okay too. That's what the conversation is totally about.
Well, I want a transcript of every word you said.
It's being recorded.
Oh.
There you go.
Hi.
Thank you.
I thought you'd be interested to know that there's a calendar published for the meetings, and I think Christmas is on there for us to celebrate as an interfaith meeting.
Good.
Yeah,
That's great.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen the calendar in a while, but I'm pretty sure that's an exclusive winter festival that, out of all the different world religions, Christianity is especially associated with Jesus being born then. I don't know of the celebrations of the other religions having as significant a winter festival. And my view has been similar to yours, that the Magi have always represented an interfaith assembly of all the religions of the East. In one of the Gospels of Matthew that's preserved in Syriac language in the East, although it's a later Provenance manuscript, it's likely a copy of an original version that would have predated some of the older manuscripts even than that one. It actually says the Magi of Zoroaster. It names Zoroaster in the Gospel of Matthew versions, but it's, yeah. But also, this would include, you know, the other religions of the East previous to Jesus, like Buddhism and Hinduism, and we can see a lot of books have been written about it, how three people wouldn't have traveled that far by themselves. We're looking at three major caravans, and this number three comes up because there's really three major religions of the East who would have been interested in this, the Zoroastrians that had prophecies for 1,000 years after Zoroaster. And the king of the Jews at the time, the exilarchs, were based in Babylon, in Persia at that time, because since the time of Cyrus the Great, who was Zoroastrian, the royal families of the Jews at the time of Daniel were intermarried with the royal Zoroastrian families. And the governmental documents at the time of Cyrus show treaties with China and Tibet and India and all these other countries. So we could see that how Buddhists would have been interested in the prophecies of the Maitreya being born in their religion. And the Hindus have a concept of Ganesha.
Yeah.
And Ganesha is the elephant, which I thought was interesting because that showed up in your original. Yeah, you didn't plan on that. There it was.
No, I like
And
that.
we always talk about the elephant in the room. And in India, Ganesha is the remover of difficulties, which for me always meant the solution and the power of the elephant to remove the problem, and the solution's in the problem itself. We can imagine the Magi coming over on elephants, with howdahs and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And so really Christmas is set up because of this as a huge interfaith festival where we could have the representatives of all the other world religions show up at the point in the ceremony, with gifts.
Yeah.
Because all the world religions before Jesus, which some people call the proto-evangelon, prophesy his coming. And all of the teachers who come after Jesus, whether that's Muhammad, the Bab, or Baha'u'llah, or Abdul-Baha, or anyone else, they give elevation to Jesus prior to this. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that the nativity scene, I didn't realize originated with St. Francis, but as you were describing it, I had a imagery overlapping that as you added other figures and characters of the opening scene in the book of Revelation of St. John, where they see the thrones being assembled in a circle, and then the Son of God, the Lamb, appears as the center of the radiant circle. And I just sort of saw like the Alpha and Omega of it from the Epiphany scene surrounding Jesus in the cradle, being the, I don't know what the opposite of the birth or epiphany would be, but the denouement scene when the the seals are broken, and we have the birth of the kingdom on earth, that he's the herald and establisher of, in the Bible. I think that's why people need to understand Jesus better and his role in all interfaith religions, because it's a very unique contribution. So a lot of people don't know this, but lastly, when Jesus came down off the mountain after 40 days and 40 nights of fasting, it says after he had fasted, then he had his 3 temptations. And then it says after he overcame the 3 temptations, this was, he was ministered to by angels, which you talked about. And then it says in the scripture that he decided to move to a town to make it his hometown, and he picked the town of Capernaum. Now, Capernaum isn't really the name of the town. If you read the Gospels, it talks about Mary Magdalene, Joseph of Arimathea, Judas Iscariot, and these last names are the towns they're from, like Kirioth or Migdal or Arimathea, Ramath, Gilead, and so forth. But none of the other apostles, they have last names. Like it's just John, Matthew, Andrew, Peter. And the reason is they all lived in the same town. Yeah. And the town they lived in was Capernaum. Now, in Hebrew, the way you say town is Caper. So the town isn't actually called Capernaum. The Greeks called it that. The town was called, well, wouldn't make sense if it was just called Num, but it was the town of the fishing village of the prophet of Nahum. From the Bible, it was the village of Nahum. And Nahum is spelled Nahum. And if you look at the Hindu design of Ganesha, the elephant, the trunk and the ear and another part of the elephant represent the sacred name of God in Hinduism, Om, which are the vowels A, U, and M, which represent the three states of consciousness in this. And Ganesha, the elephant's trunk and the ear, is symbol of the name Om.
Wow.
And above it, above the three vowels, is a Chandra Bindu, which is a star, or a Bindu is a dot, and a Chandra is a moon crescent. So it looks like an upside down umbrella, like a circle with a dot in it.
Yeah, yeah.
And in Arabic and in the East, that letter is the letter N. So this word Om is actually Ne-Om, but the N is silent. And this is the village where Jesus is from, where he made his city. And Ganesha is also a prophesied motif in Hinduism for baby Jesus. And this way, because it says, in his name we pray, and everybody prays in the last name of Matthew, Mark, Matthew, Peter, Andrew, Jesus, and all of them, because they were Nehum from that village, named after the prophet. So there's a great unity between the East and the West, and I totally am in favor of supporting Interfaith Christmas. Absolutely. Thank you so much for this presentation. I got a lot out of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, there's obviously so much more we can delve into with all of this. It's really quite amazing.